What's up, guys, and welcome back to my channel, Lunatia33. That was kind of a weird movement right there. Sorry. So today's kind of a random video that I just thought of right after filming another video not too long ago. So I was thinking, I'm pretty sure other people have had this question too, but how do you know what deck to pick for your session? Now, for me personally, which I'm sure others would also feel this way, I think it depends on the theme of your session. You can also go about sort of looking at your collection and kind of feeling what you should use that day, you know, like stare at your collection. For example, me, I'd be looking over here, depending on the session that I'm having, and I look through and then just ask, okay, well, which one for today? You know what I mean? Like, that's just as an example. But if you want to go solely on like, well, what deck should I pick for this kind of reading or for that kind of reading? Like, I have a few examples in front of me already just to use. For example, if you're doing a session that, like a love session, a love reading, a session that involves questions of love, relationships, even sexual relationships or things of that nature, I have these decks here in general that I would pick out just to go with the theme of the session. An oracle deck I would use is the Lover's Oracle, because like, duh, lovers, right? So there's that. I would also use, as far as tarot decks, like the Lumen Edition tarot deck here, because the colors and how it looks, it's very, ooh, look at the rainbows. It's very like sensual and soft, and I don't know, it just has that feel to me. So that's one deck that I would use. If it's one of those like spicy kind of readings, I would use Tarot of the Sexual Magic, which has a lot of, you know, spicy content in there. And if you look at the relation to the colors here, even like just on the boxes of the decks, there's pinks and reds, right? Which are associated. The colors themselves, if you're looking into color theory or the psychology of color, the colors themselves, reds and pinks, kind of fall under the same family, which also relates to that of love, passion. So that's kind of how I would go about picking decks for a session that involves love readings, sexual relationships, romantic relationships, even like just like friendship relationships or ones that are not, that don't involve a sexual or romantic connection. Like even just this deck in general can be used for that. But those are just examples of what I would kind of go to sometimes if it involves like a love reading or things related to a love reading. But you can see the similarity sort of within the decks, especially when it comes to like their main color base being red or hues of red, which is interesting. Now, if I'm looking into doing like a dream reading or something that involves going into the subconscious mind, I'd go more for like decks that, to me, the artwork just makes me think of dreams. It's very kind of out there, if that makes any sense. These are just some examples that I have here. So we have the Chrysalis Tarot as an example. A lot of these are kind of, they made me think of fairy tales. They give me like an old-timey kind of vibe, but I think this one, I get drawn to this one when it comes to like readings that involve dreams or readings that involve diving into your subconscious and things of that nature. So that's why I would, you know, lean towards this deck as an example. Another example that I have here, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have this deck or know about it, is the Lightseer's Tarot. So a lot of the artwork in here to me feels, like I said, very kind of out there and dreamlike. I don't know if it could be the way that they're drawn, like the movement of the line work or even like the colors used, but it gives me dreamy vibes. It's very vibrant. It's not totally out there, you know what I mean, when it comes to what's used within the artwork itself. Like it's not too, what's the word, not abstract. It's not too in the mind of Salvador Dali, like weird, if that makes any sense. Weird in a good way. It's not too out there, but it's out there enough for me to reach for this deck when it comes to like dream readings or looking into the subconscious of someone. Hopefully that makes sense, but this is just one of the decks that I would reach for if it involves that kind of session. Another deck that I have here that I feel is kind of like fits into the whole dream subconscious, you know, world or mind or reading, if you're having that kind of session, is the Ostara Tarot. This is the Ostara Tarot. So this one, I feel, compared to the Lightseers Tarot, the Ostara Tarot is more out there when it comes to the artwork used. I kind of like lean more to this one. Like, I'd pick this one probably over the Lightseers for when it comes to dreams. I mean, look at this card. Oh, this frog is chilling and they're fishing with boats, going into not a black hole, but some sort of hole here. Like, the water is going down somewhere, but like they're fishing with boats. How weird is that? You know, like, this is something that you'd see in a dream or something. Like, what kind of frog fishes with boats? But you get my drift, right? Oh, look, another 3. We just got a 3 card come out. But just like the artwork that's used here and the way that they're drawn, it just gives me dream vibes. It takes me into that kind of world or dimension. So I think the Ostara Tarot would be pretty good to use if you're having like a session that involves dreams or that involves kind of diving deep into the mind, the subconscious mind of a person. The next type of session that I'm familiar with, which I feel like most of us are familiar with too, are kind of sessions that involve financial things like money, jobs, your finances, just things in those categories. So for those, I generally try to go with a typical like RWS deck, kind of like where it started from in the beginning to where it is now. I don't know if that makes any sense. Kind of going back to the old school from how it used to be. So I usually tend to pick decks that are like that. Or I pick decks that have some gold in them. Just because like gold, I think of gold relating to money and like pirates gold. I don't know, I'm weird like that. So I would either pick an RWS, just, you know, plain straight to the point deck for those kind of readings where it involves finances, jobs, career, money, or I would pick a deck that has little accents of gold. Because like I said, the fact that there's gold in here just makes me think of, you know, money or being a pirate. So I would use these as, you know, for examples for those kind of readings or those kind of sessions. The next session that I'm kind of familiar with involves more like childlike energy or the innocence of a child. Or if you're doing a reading, like a pregnancy reading, which I actually don't really do. You know, things of that nature where it involves the energy of a child, childlike energy, young energy, or if you're even reading for a child, which I think is pretty cool if any of you have ever done that, especially if the child asked for the reading. I think that'd be awesome. But things like that, these are the decks that I kind of go to for those types of readings. So one of them, of course, would be the Happy Tarot. Straight up childlike energy in this tarot deck. This is also pretty good for like a kid to start off with. If you have a kid that wants to get into reading tarot, I think the Happy Tarot is one of those to start with, but it just feels really friendly. I mean, don't get me wrong, you still get the point across with like, you know, particular cards in the tarot, like the Tower and the Devil and things like that, or the Three of Swords, but it's just the artwork that changes the energy, which a lot of people, I mean, some people, I can feel saying that like, oh, it doesn't matter what deck you use in whatever session. But to be honest, like artwork in general changes, or even colors in general, like I said earlier, talking about color theory, changes the theme and the feelings surrounding the session or the reading, or even the environment of where you're at, you know, can change the perspective or how that reading or session feels. So that's why I feel like the deck that you pick per the reading or session that you're doing, I think is pretty important. Me personally, of course, I mean, like I said, to each their own, but that's why I'm doing this video, to show you guys kind of examples of what I would use specifically depending on what kind of reading it is. Hopefully that makes sense. But that is one of the decks that I would use when it comes to readings that involve like childlike energy, childlike essence, young energy, babies, or if you're doing a reading to a younger, you know, person. And then this is another deck that I would use, which is the Affirmator's Tarot. I edged mine, by the way, it does not come edged. But this one as well just has, you know, those vibes. Like, look at even just how the drawings are, the artwork is. It changes the vibes and the energy that would be in your session. Hopefully that makes sense. That's my point of this video, is to kind of show you how what deck you use can ultimately change the feels of the session. And I'll show you an example later on of how that can be too. But this is another deck I would use for sessions that involve anything to do with children, young energy, babies, you know, things of that nature. This one is kind of a random, not a random session, but a random category, I guess. These I feel are kind of more in your face tarot decks, which I feel like whatever kind of reading this would be kind of like, all right, well, you want the truth? Like, are you coming to me for the truth? Because I'm gonna tell ya, all right? And you're probably not gonna like it because it's what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. So I feel like these decks are pretty good with, you know, getting that point across. The first one that I'm gonna talk about is the Wizard's Tarot. It's one of those kind of random out there sort of decks or artwork, but I feel like it gets a little too in your face. But it's not too harsh. It kind of shows this sort of comedic, like a comedy relief, if that makes any sense. You know how there's comedy relief in movies or even shows? Like there's that one person who's the comedic relief in there. I feel like this deck, it gets, you know, it tells you how it is, but there's comedic relief in there. Does that make sense? But I usually use this deck for those kinds of readings where like this person, they just need you to tell it to them straight, you know, no bullshit, things like that. So I would usually use this deck for that. This also gives me, what is that show called? Adventure Time. Adventure Time feels, which is also why I like this deck. And the next deck that I would use for kind of the in-your-face tarot sessions or tarot readings is the Mystical Garbage Tarot. This one has quite a few cards that I feel won't vibe with a lot of people, and it's understandable because this deck is in your face, which is why I put it in this category. It's not for everyone, but the whole in your face readings is not for everyone either, because a lot of people don't really want to hear what they need to hear. They just want to hear what they want to hear, unfortunately. But I feel like this deck is one of those that is in your face and tells you how it is, especially with the artwork that it has and the artwork that the artist chose to use. Hopefully that makes sense. Hey, it's the troll that's on the cover, which is the Fool. Oh my god, how many of you guys have had trolls when you grew up? The troll dolls? But yeah, this is another deck that I would use for the in-your-face sessions. The other type of sessions that I'm familiar with or that I personally work with is paranormal or mediumship sessions. Those that involved talking to the dead or talking to spirits. So these are decks that I feel kind of fit that theme or that type of session. One being the Haunted House Tarot. And I'm not one to particularly use certain decks just because, like, for example, oh, it's Halloween season, I'm only gonna use these decks and then never touch them again until it's Halloween again. I don't do that, that's not me. But this is one of the decks that I would use for sessions that involve mediumship or tarot with the dead, like I do here on my channel, because it gives off the vibes. It adds to the theme of the reading. It adds to the theme of the session in general. You're kind of setting the vibe for the session, if that makes any sense. Another deck that I would use for mediumship readings or readings that involve the paranormal, spirits in general, is the Hush Tarot. Now, to me, the Hush Tarot is one of those kind of like creepy, dark decks, which is why I love it, because the artwork is like, whoa. If you guys have this deck, you know what I mean. It also gives me like dark fairy vibes. Well, in this case, it'd be pixies, I think, because pixies, to me, as far as I'm aware, pixies are more, not troublesome, but they're more mischievous, I guess, than fairies. Do you know what I mean? This artwork just it just takes you to another dimension. That's why I like to use this for my paranormal or mediumship readings. And you know what? It also depends on like what kind of mediumship you're doing. Because like I said, for me, I do paranormal based readings. But let's say I'm doing, if I'm doing a mediumship reading for somebody and it's their family member, then what I personally do for, you know, that particular session is, like I said earlier in the video, is I look at my collection and I ask the person that I'm connecting to, like, which one do you want me to use? Or which one are you attracted to? And usually when that happens, I start seeing, you know, certain things that they like or that they don't like or that they want to kind of mention in the reading, and maybe that'll help the person that I'm reading to make the connection. For example, one of my mediumship readings that I did, I used the, well, you guys can't see it. Oh wait, you kind of can. The tattoo tarot right here. 8 coins tattoo tarot. I used that one for one of my mediumship readings, and it was for this person's dad. And when I was looking at my decks, asking the spirit that I was connecting to, I'm like, which one should I use? And I kept like being told that one, like my eyes kept going to that one. I'm looking over here, but like my third eye is like going over here looking at the 8 coins tattoo tarot. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna go with this one. And then when I picked that one, I also got like an image in my third eye, kind of, I don't see this person with tattoos, but yet they want me to use the tattoo tarot because they love tattoos. Like they loved tattoos, but they themselves never had any. So they loved the idea of tattoos, but they never had any. And obviously I never met this spirit before in human form, but I thought it was really cool and also kind of funny that they chose that deck. And I brought it up to the client that I was reading to, and she kind of validated the whole fact that like he loved tattoos, but he actually never had a tattoo. And he didn't feel bad that she ended up getting tattoos. So I just thought that was really cool. So when it involves like mediumship readings, I tend to go with what I'm being told to pick versus paranormal readings where I would kind of stick to particular kind of like spooky or dark themes. Very rare it's a particular deck that calls to me to pick because I don't know who's gonna come through when I'm doing one of those paranormal sessions. But I just wanted to put that out there, kind of explain doing a mediumship reading versus just doing my general paranormal readings. Anyways, another deck that I would use, you know, involving paranormal or mediumship is the Old Whispers Tarot. Right here, this one is highly based on the stories and artwork of Cthulhu, relating to H.P. Lovecraft's like version and stories of Cthulhu and the world of Cthulhu, or like the creatures in Cthulhu's like where they live or where they came from, you know what I mean? So I would use this deck because, like I said, it fits the vibe of that type of reading. Oop, it was already right side up. But yeah, so these are just a few decks that I would use regarding like mediumships or paranormal readings or sessions. The other thing, like I said earlier, is like kind of feeling them out if it's a mediumship reading. The other thing too is there are decks that you can technically use for a variety of sessions. Like you can always use the original RWS deck for any type of session really. But these are just some decks that I have that I use for any type of session. One of them is the Elemental Wisdom Tarot because the artwork is very different in colors. It's like light, it's dark. There's a mixture. See, like this one, it's very light, it's very vibrant. There's a mixture of energies here, but also well balanced. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's why I like to use this deck for a variety of different types of readings or sessions. That's just one of them. And then the other deck that I like to use for any type of session is the Cosmic Visions Tarot right here. Ooh, it has like a splash of rainbow colors, but it's predominantly dark, like the darkness in there, you know? But it still has a splash of color. So I feel like this one is very balanced with, like I said, with the other deck, with like light and darkness. Does that make sense? So that's why I like using this deck for a variety of readings. Oh my god, look at that color. And of course, I can't not include my own deck in here, because like, why not? Because I do use it that way. I also use my own deck for any type of readings right here. This is the Iris Tarot. These are the backs. Oh, I edged mine, by the way. I have a video on how I edged it too. But mine has a variety of energy as well. It has animals, it has humans, but not in the sense that we're used to seeing. Humans in the sense of what's underneath. I'd rather focus on what's underneath, what makes us kind of show that we're all one, rather than what's on the outside, what everybody else cares about. So I went with like skulls, kind of like we're all the same on the inside. So that's why I went with skulls here for my deck in particular. But I feel like it's very, you know, it's kind of balanced with the whole light and dark energy. So I like to use my deck for a variety of readings as well. So there's that. I did want to show you guys an example of what I mean when it comes to like why it kind of matters what deck you use in the type of session you have. Like I said before though, you can always just, you know, do the RWS and just go with that. Like, well, depending on what reading it is, if you pick a particular deck, I feel like it just won't fit. Or even like if I was like, here, I'll show you an example. I'm just trying to like put this darn deck away. An example, let's say mediumship reading, right? Let's say I'm the client and I'm going to you to do a reading with me on my dad who just passed away. I probably would not want to see you use the Happy Tarot, especially if my father just passed away. Like, I don't want to, I'm not going to feel particularly happy if you use something like the Happy Tarot to, you know, connect with my father and do the reading. But there is an argument with that though. If, let's say, the reader connected to this deck in particular, let's say my father picked that deck, then it would make sense, you know, because that would be like my father's sense of humor coming out. Another example, actually I think a better example for this is, let's say you're doing like a paranormal reading. You're doing a paranormal reading either at home, at your altar to connect with spirits, or you're out in the field. I don't want to see the Happy Tarot coming out in a paranormal reading when you're trying to get all in the mood, in the vibe of the session. I'd rather see something like the Hush Tarot coming out, because it sets the vibes, it gets you in the moods of the reading, right? Like Hush Tarot versus Happy Tarot for a paranormal reading for ghost hunting. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna pick the Happy Tarot for that. But that's just an example of why I feel certain decks fit with certain types of readings. Now again, that's not to say, oh, well, I really have to have that kind of deck for that kind of reading then. No, you do not. You can just get, like I said, the original RWS and use that, because that one kind of fits with everything really. It's kind of like the OG. It's the OG that started it all. It's the OG that was used for any type of session before. So you can always just go back with that one. What I'm saying is I feel like certain decks add to the ambiance of your type of reading or your type of session that you're having. Not necessarily that you have to have those for that particular reading or session. Let me know in the comments still how you guys go about choosing your decks. Some of you guys may just have one deck and that's all you use, which is cool, which is fine. For those of you who have more than one deck, how do you go about choosing your deck? Even if you have two decks, how do you know which one to pick? Why do you pick that one for that reading? What is it that draws you to pick that particular deck for that reading? If you have more than one. If you have one, then obviously you're always just gonna pick that deck. But like just in general, I always wonder or think about like what deck is the right one for this session? What deck should I pick for this reading? Will it make sense to the client as to why I'm using this? Will they get confused by the artwork? Like if I'm using, like I said, the Happy Tarot for a reading that involves kind of like sad, you know, low vibrational energy. I don't think that's gonna make sense in the reading, and the last thing you want to do is confuse the client if you were to use something like that versus something that kind of fits more the vibe and the energy of the reading. But let me know in the comments, guys. I am curious, if you do just have one deck, do you find it hard to connect with the vast majority of different types of readings using the same deck? Or do you feel like you're just comfortable in going with the flow because you've used that one deck for so long? Those who have more than one deck, do you find it hard with choosing the deck that you feel you should use for the reading? Or how do you go about choosing your deck? Do you do the method of let me feel it out and see which one I should go with? Or do you stick with like, let me pick these because they kind of fit the theme? So I'm just curious, you know, just to get your feedback or your take on it. Let me know in the comments down below, please. So I think I said all that I had to say. If I forgot anything, I'll probably add it in the description down below. If you guys have any questions for me, let me know in the comments down below as well. Don't forget to like the video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!